We've got a big episode of the Geoff Wilson Show today. We have the organizers from the National coming on the show to talk about everything that went down in Cleveland at the 2024 National. What went well, but also the challenges that they encountered and how that was all handled, what could have gone better. And they're also going to look towards the future. They're going to tell us about the 2025 National for the first time. We're going to be hearing more details about how they're going to be running the 2025 National, which is going to be taking place at the Rosemont Convention Center just outside of Chicago. Jim, Brian, and Joe from the management committee of the National are coming on the show now, and it's going to be a great conversation to hear from them everything about the 2024 and 2025 National. So let's get started. Joe, Jim, and Brian, welcome to the show. Appreciate you guys joining. And for the audience who maybe isn't familiar with each of you, maybe we could start with you guys kind of introducing yourselves and what your role with the National is. Joe, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. Joe Drellick, and primarily, with the National, I've handled for the bulk part of the corporate, from start to finish with corporate booths, corporate sponsorships. But collectively, and Jimmy and Brian, I'll jump in on this as well, for the way we do things, we've all been in each other's business all year long. But, I was the primary contact for corporate, but we've all stayed integrated in each other's space so that we all could help each other walk through the process together. So,
Jim, you want to go next?
Jimmy Ryan, one of the show managers, logistics. And again, like Joe said, we all work back and forth with each other through all of our functions for the National.
And last but not least, Brian.
Yeah, Brian Capola, handling IT and helping Jimmy with logistics and doing some marketing.
And so everybody knows just a little bit more about the structure. So the three of you are part of a management group that the National brings on to run the show. I know all three of you have experience running card shows for years and have done a lot of other really, really successful shows. This was your first year working together as a group to run the National. Is that right, Joe?
yeah, correct. Absolutely. This was our first year, although it started a lot more than a year ago. But yeah, definitely our first year together with the National and behind the scenes for a few years. Again, our shows are centrally located in the Northeast. So Jimmy, Brian, and I have worked and collaborated together with coordinations of our shows. So our staffs are very familiar with each other. So yeah, we've spent a good amount of time together. But yeah, this was year one for us.
And we've had you on before talking, for example, in the past about like the Philly show. We had an opportunity to talk there and learn about the history of that show on a prior Geoff Wilson Show episode, which was a lot of fun. But today we're here to talk about the National. Obviously, we had the 2024 National in Cleveland, which took place about a month ago yet. Have you guys caught up on sleep since then, or do you need like another month or two to catch up from that event?
I would say we're pretty well caught up now, I guess. Starting to catch up now.
I'm gonna say I need more.
I can only imagine, and I appreciate you guys coming on the show. I have been outspoken about some of the challenges with the 2024 National, a lot of which really mainly resided, in my opinion, around the conference center and some of the challenges with the IX Center and their setup of various things in Cleveland. As you guys look back on the 2024 National, what are some of your main takeaways from that experience?
Wow, that's a deep one. Go ahead, Brian.
We were infrastructurally challenged by the age of the building, and in hindsight, the Cleveland Convention Center was retrofitted into a conference center, opposed to it being an actual an actual
Convention center
event space. So that poses a long set of challenges right off the get-go. And Joe was quoted as saying that the building was built in 1942, which it was, and it was a former airport hangar, and it's just a much different environment than a traditional convention center is, and that posed some challenges for us.
Yeah, I think, to add to that a little bit, I think, what Brian said is factually correct. I mean, we can get into this a little bit later in more detail, but the National has certain guidelines it needs to follow just because of the size and scope, which means that the building gets picked out 3 years in advance, and we use a limited time frame to pick those dates, and there's specific reasons that we do that. It's wedged in between summer vacations, kids getting out of school, the Baseball Hall of Fame inductions, the Football Hall of Fame inductions, and that's the pocket that the National landed in many years ago. So that becomes challenging with the availability of buildings. And, prior to COVID, the National was in a different state and frame that it currently is. And when you're projecting your building out 3 years, and then an event like COVID happens, and then the explosion of the hobby happens, there's no real way to calculate that. It just sort of happens and you have to work around it. So we knew, again, we weren't the hired management team quite yet when Cleveland was picked as the location, but we knew there were going to be challenges, and that became our number one goal, and that was the first thing that we dove into to see exactly what our challenges were going to go. And like Brian said, my first step was I Googled the IX Center and I read everything I could about it and understood the building and the structure of the building, and said, okay, all right, this is what we got, and we're going to make this work, and we're going to do everything that we can to make the best event possible. And the three of us have had conversations in the past and talking to people and getting feedback, which we love. And to your point about us coming on, we don't do a lot of shows, and that's because, when you go to a rock concert, they don't interview the sound guys behind the scenes that are making all the magic happen and all the things happening. You're there for the concert. You want to see the concert. So that's our take on it. We prefer, to be behind the scenes, doing the work, making the best experience that we can possibly make. And that's sort of, what we did with Cleveland, and talking to people. We also knew that if you took that event and you picked it up and you moved it to a beautiful facility, let's say Atlanta. Atlanta's got a beautiful convention center down there. There's many beautiful convention centers. Indianapolis is a beautiful convention center. Houston is beautiful. Anaheim is beautiful. Las Vegas is beautiful. You take that show and you drop it in there, 90% of those problems disappear just by doing that. But that wasn't what we were faced with. We were faced with the building, and we had to make the best event possible that we could make. So.
Yeah, and I understand that. And by the way, I agree with that commentary. I mean, most of the challenges that I encountered this year and that I've spoke about, on the show were oriented around the fact that I just didn't feel like both the physical building of the convention center and the setup of everything around it, from parking to the location of hotels and, all that type of thing. I just didn't feel like it was at the scope where it could handle the National any longer. I'm sure it was a much better solution for the National back in 2018, but in 2024, with how the card industry has evolved, it just felt like the National had evolved beyond what that could provide. And of course, as you said, the location was selected before anybody really understood exactly where the card industry was going and how the growth was going to be there. And it was picked before you guys got involved as the management team. I do want to give credit to the fact that once the show started, there were challenges, obviously, with things like parking. It seemed like you guys were trying to do everything within your power to make things better as the experience went on. For example, I did notice with parking, getting in and out of the parking lot was a real challenge, the first day or two, but that was something that seemed to get significantly better. Other people were going in and out of the other entrance, and the flow of that got better as the few days went on. What was it like leading it and being there behind the scenes and trying to adapt to some of those challenges that you guys were encountering in real time?
Well, like you said there, in running any show, you can walk in with the best plan, but there's always going to be some kind of deviation from your plan. Like you said, with the parking lot, we worked hand in hand with the IX Center to have the flow changed in the parking lot to get everybody out. And by the way, the IX Center was fantastic with making changes last minute. We opened up additional bathrooms in the back when we had the bathroom issues. As much as we could do inside the building, we did. And you can walk in with the best plan, but sometimes things just pop up, and you have to just be able to just roll with the flow and try to make the best you can out of a situation that pops up that's uncontrollable at the time that you don't know about. It's all about having good people and good staff around you and people willing to be able to make changes for you.
Jim, I would tell them about the airport story about what happened with getting in the morning. What happened?
Oh, the parking lot fees?
Yeah.
So so there's a lot of people that were surprised that all of a sudden the parking lot fee was free. Well, the story is the reason why it was free was we were blocking traffic on the road. Not we, but the customers were blocking traffic on the road, and somebody from inside the upper echelon of Cleveland called and said, "Get the cars off the road, make it free parking inside the parking lot, get them off the road." We were blocking the airport traffic. That's how long the traffic line was backed up. So even with us having to make changes, Cleveland had to make changes for the show. Gives you an idea of how we outgrew Cleveland, and as we joke around, we say we broke Cleveland. That's what we say, and there it is.
And
So even Cleveland has to get involved, not just us.
And that's an awesome pull the curtain back statement right there, because
Yeah.
that's something that not the average person attending the National would ever know about.
Understands.
The fact that the city of Cleveland made a phone call to the IX Center, in essence said, let everybody in for free. We've got to solve this problem. And that's the beauty of kind of the things that you don't see, right? Like you said, you noticed the difference, and you noticed some things were changing and happening. Meanwhile, Jimmy, Brian, and myself were in a huddle, football style, calling plays, trying to navigate these situations. So.
And part of it is due to a good challenge, and that is that you guys had a ton of people show up at the National this year. Mm-hmm. I had predicted prior to the National, I felt like attendance was probably going to be down a little bit from Chicago, because I felt like Cleveland's not as easy for people to get to, not necessarily as accessible to fly in and out of. And Chicago set such a high watermark in 2023 that I just felt like naturally maybe things would dip a little bit in 2024. That didn't seem to be the case at all. You guys would know better than I would what the actual attendance numbers were, but anecdotally, it seemed to me like if it was every bit as busy as Chicago the year prior, if not busier. It felt busier at times. Were you guys surprised by the level of the crowds that actually came to show up?
So we never got handed the attendance figures from Chicago. Nobody says, here's what the attendance last year was, never passed down to us. The NSCC really doesn't give out its attendance figures. How we can track attendance is by pre-ticket sales. People order their tickets online. We went into Cleveland ahead of Chicago on pre-ticket sales. And we saw the trend for the last couple of months coming up to it, that we're running neck and neck, and the last few weeks we closed it and was ahead. We said, well, let's see what the walk-up crowd is going to be like, because walk-up crowd you really can't track. They're not pre-buying their tickets. And I think, I'll speak for Joe and myself and Brian here, all three of us together here, I think based on what we saw, walk-up crowd, and just the flow on the floor inside the room, having all of our years' experience of running shows, our own shows, I thought we beat I thought we beat Chicago. I think we had a massive crowd in there. Just by traffic flow and observing the floor and the transactions on the floor. Joe, Brian, anything to add to it?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, I think that's accurate. And, again, the walk-up piece is a wild card. It really is. Running our own events, you can get some idea of kind of, over the patterns of the years on our regional events, what it's going to look like. But, with the National, because of the scale and scope, there's really no way to project that. And, again, challenges were there. We knew about them, and we were preparing as best we could and making the adjustments along the way.
So as you're looking out to the 2025 National, how are you able to project what that might look like? Because I assume there's elements like how many hotel rooms you block off, how much of the show floor you open up, that are dependent upon how much traffic, how many people you actually think are going to show up at the National next year. Are you guys expecting it to be bigger and busier than Cleveland was? What's your outlook at this point?
I mean, we hope the market stays as strong as it is, and it is busier than Cleveland. The Chicago building's a little bit bigger. It's not laid out as square as Cleveland is, but the footprint is bigger in Chicago. There are more booths in Chicago. The hotels are located so much better in Chicago. I mean, once you get there, you're there. It's like going to Disneyland. Once you get to the block, you stay there. A lot less. The traffic won't be as big as an issue because not as many people will be driving. In Cleveland, everybody had to drive to Cleveland. Hotels are 5-10 miles away, whatever they actually were. But in Chicago, everything's right there. So I think Chicago will handle a larger crowd, and we will gear up for a larger crowd in Chicago, where we think it'll be a larger crowd. The market is very strong, just judging by everybody's shows and talking to everybody. The market is still very, very strong.
And I think there's another angle to take too with that, on top of what Jimmy said, because everything he said was spot on. The one thing we do know is hotel bookings are really, really strong. We've heard they're rumors at this point. I haven't called hotels to validate them, but I've heard hotel prices have increased quite a bit if you're not using the national booking service. So that's an indicator right there. Early bookings are really, really strong. The other piece to the national, I would say, that I think has become really relevant is the national hasn't had any price increases since COVID. And if you live in this world and you go shopping or you do anything, you know how much things have gone up in costs. And if you look at the value that the national provides from a pure collector standpoint, or someone that wants to take their kids to an event, you can't touch it. You just can't touch it. Kids getting in free, military getting in free. The price points of the national are extremely low in comparison to other events across the United States, which is a blessing to the national, and that's the beauty of it. And what it allows for is it allows collectors to come in and spend money, right? And which is what all the dealers want. The national is designed to be transactional. So the more affordable and the more friendly you can make it, which the national has done a wonderful job at doing, it's really been a really good recipe for success. And I think that is part of the reason for the really, really, really strong crowds. I mean, it's really hard to do something with a family of four for $25. It really just is, and you can do that with the national. When we put tickets on sale and you go buy those tickets, you can lock them in for $25. And that's something I think we're proud of as the management team, and to be able to provide that year after year is great.
I agree. That is a great value. And I want to talk about families and kids at the National, because I felt like I saw a lot more of them in Cleveland in prior years. But let's get back to that. I want to ask the question. I'm a little bit concerned. I've been to the Rosemont, Chicago, area national 3 times. The setup there, I think, is great compared to Cleveland. I love the hotels that are all connected to the convention center. I love the variety of restaurants that are all within walking distance. I love the event spaces that can be used by, the different corporates that are throwing parties all within the nearby region. All of that's perfect. But I'm concerned that if the National continues on this trajectory that it's been on the last few years, that I know you guys are locked in to the Rosemont Convention Center for the next 3 years. If we see the National increase year over year by 20 or 30% attendance for the next 3 years, by the time we get to year 3, could we have overwhelmed that convention center and its infrastructure so much that it can no longer reasonably support the crowds, and we run into some of the same challenges there that we ran into in Cleveland this last year? I'm worried about that. Are these concerns that I have unfounded, or is that something that's on your kind of radar as well?
You guys got to excuse me 1 second. I have somebody here, but I want to answer that question. Jim, if you don't mind answering that, I just got to jump off camera for a second.
Yeah, I can jump in for a sec, no problem. I mean, I think it's like Jimmy said prior. It goes back to that mentality of you put the plan together and then you adjust accordingly. So I think that will be the approach for our team, because that is how we do everything. We analyze, we sit back, we look at everything that's happening and make adjustments as needed. And I think that will absolutely be on the table for us to do. And I don't like to go down speculative routes or what ifs, but I think that there are multiple areas where you can solve that problem. And I'd rather not really just talk about the what ifs, because I don't think that's fair at this point. But I will tell you this: if Chicago blows the doors off in 2025 and we're feeling that stronger, I think Jimmy Bryan and I would be happy to come on and talk about ideas that we have in place, because I know we'll have them in place. But there are some that come right to mind to me. So that's what I'll it's not that I'm trying to be coy or anything like that. I would just rather say that we definitely have actually spoken about different areas and ways to combat crowds. That's definitely a discussion that we have.
And these are good problems to have. I mean, it's awesome that the interest in the hobby right now is at an extreme high point, and I really hope it continues. I'm optimistic that this growth is going to continue and that you guys are going to have the challenges of things bursting at the seams in Rosemont, just as they were bursting in the seams at Cleveland. As you look beyond the next 3 years, I know there's a whole process for how convention center sites are picked. There are convention centers in the country that are bigger than Rosemont, that have more infrastructure around it than even Rosemont does. Do you see the National in future years beyond the next 3 maybe going up a level in terms of convention center and everything around it? Or do you think that maybe Rosemont's a long-term solution for what you guys are trying to build?
Well, the next time it's up for vote is 2028, the next site vote. What we do as a management team is we go out and we contact different convention centers throughout the country, and we look at size, internet, Wi-Fi, everything, hotels, airport locations, dates. As Joe explained earlier, we work in a small window of dates. We're trying to expand that window of dates a little bit. Last time we did this for 2026 was our last search, and I think we contacted 27 different convention centers in the country. We got down to a short list of 6 or 7 convention centers. We then gave them to the board. The board got it down to three sites. We put the 3 sites out for vote, and we all know what the vote was. Chicago won for 2026. And they actually won pretty handily. They beat Atlantic City and Atlanta. We do believe that we need to go to a more modern day convention center. As Joe, I think it was Joe stated before, once we go to a more modern day convention center, we drop the show in there, a lot of these infrastructure problems go away. So we will be investigating more modern day, larger convention centers going out further in the future.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's exciting.
Once that process is picked, the dealers then vote for the convention center.
Exactly.
The dealers vote for it. Okay, when they pick their booths, they check off their selection. So it's really up to the dealers to realize also to support a more modern day convention center. Not saying anything bad about Chicago or anything, but as the show grows, as we all hope the show keeps growing, we're going to go to a more modern day convention center. It's important for the dealers to realize that and select a more modern day convention center, because we as the management team cannot pick one. We get it down to a short list, and the dealers themselves vote for it.
And I think I want to just add to Jimmy, what he said there, because we were discussing, making sure that we can share this, and we absolutely can. One of the first things that we did as the management team prior to coming in was we changed the process for the vote. So what Jim's talking about is the dealers vote for the city, right? We vet out the city, we present it to the board gets the list down to 3, and then the dealers come in and vote. And that vote was done in the past through when the packet goes out, you get your form in and you send it back in to the national board, and that has your vote on it. And what we said collectively was, that process needs to be updated. And so what the process was for 2023, like Jim is talking about for the 2026 location, was when you come in and you pick your booth on the weekend. That's how we do it at the National. You'll pick next year's booth, the following year's booth at the current National. Okay, so when you came in, you picked your spot, you filled out your application, and you paid, you had to vote. It was mandatory. You couldn't pick your location until you voted. So we got 100% voting, which was unheard of. It really had never been done before. And I apologize for not emailing this to you, so I hope it translates. But this was what was sent out to everybody in September of last year, and this was the votes as they came in, and this went out in a bulk email, constant contact. So again, I apologize for not emailing it to you ahead of time, but you can clearly see the votes. There were 333 votes, 170 for Chicago, 111 for Atlantic City, and 52 for Atlanta. And Atlanta came to Chicago and presented, and they did a beautiful job, as did Atlantic City, which was something else that our management team brought back, where the cities that were in contention for consideration for the National were given the opportunity to come and speak to anyone that wanted to come. We had so many people at that time frame for that presentation that we had to turn hundreds of people away. The aisleways were full. I wish your camera crew was there, because it would have really been a great moment to capture and share with people and see 400, 500, 600 people wanting to come and see cities present. So that's some more behind the scenes things that most people probably aren't privy to and don't know. But this same exact process will happen, as Jimmy said, at the 2025 National. So next year's Chicago National, this same exact scenario will happen where we will have 3 cities to choose from. The cities will be able to come and present to anyone that wants to listen, and the dealers will then vote that weekend, and that's how that will be established for 2028. And to Jimmy's point, you know, we're strongly focusing on brand new cities and brand new modern convention centers. That's our focal point for 28.
Well said.
Well, I love that conceptually. I love the idea of a modern convention center. You know, I think that the hobby deserves it. I think the hobby needs it. I think the National deserves it. I think, you know, the hobby's kind of evolved in that manner where things are a little bit different, and there are some great convention centers around the country. And so I think that's wonderful. I'm excited to see where that goes. There have been new events starting in the sports card world. We saw a big one take place in New York in August. As you're thinking about the future of the National, and I don't want to say that there's increased competition, because I feel like the National, you know, is the preeminent event for collectors and is likely to remain that way. But there certainly are more opportunities to take attention and potentially dollars from the collecting community to go to different areas. How are you able to continue to evolve the National to keep it as that preeminent place, that bucket list item for collectors that to absolutely have to travel to every single summer?
I mean, I think you have to meet the needs of what is being requested by the collectors and the dealers, which is, you know, the hot topic is, you know, bigger, better center. You know, we're the epicenter for collecting and in sports cards and autographs, and we have to stay true to that. To all those successes that got us to where we are, we have to continue to maintain it and grow. You know, grow with, you know, the modern input of the modern collector coming in and meet those needs, but stay on track with what our foundation is. And I think that's just the key right there to maintaining success for the National.
Very well said.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to the future there for sure. One challenge, or at least it seemed like a challenge this year, was that there was so much demand from dealers who wanted to get into the show, yet obviously there's a limited show floor. There's only a certain number of dealer tables that you can make available. Demand was so high this year that there was such a number of dealers that wanted to get into the National but weren't able to, that there were actually 2 different card shows that were set up by groups of dealers at adjacent, you know, venues, other venues in Cleveland that would take place in the evening outside of the National. One was kind of an ultra-modern focused card show. Another was focused around soccer. There may have been others as well. But talking to the dealers there, these were all dealers who said, man, I would have loved to have set up at the National, didn't have the opportunity, never going to get that chance perhaps. So this is the next best thing. I'm going to set up at another card show in the same city that's going to take place in the evening. Is this something that the National is embracing? Is this something that you would like to see not have to happen in the future? What's your feeling about how that played out this year?
Well, the Chicago floor plan for next year is approximately 50 booths larger than what Cleveland was. So it allowed us to get through more of the waiting list of dealers that did not get into last year when they picked their booths this year. Going forward in the future, we're working with the board to new ideas to get more dealers into the show. Really can't release any information on it now, but we're working toward gearing up to getting more dealers into the show in the future, expanding the show possibly. And on a side note, I don't know how, I'll let Joe and Brian speak in this too. I think that no matter what you do with the National, you're always still going to have some nighttime side stuff going on. I don't think it's ever going to go away. I think people are just addicts and addicted to this so much that they're going to find something else to do at nighttime. Just like our trade nights we had this year at the National. 3 nights of trade nights, and they were jam-packed for 3 nights. People are always going to find something to do. Joe, Brian, want to add something to that?
Yeah, I guess always the big giant question is how many other people want to enter that are sending in applications or didn't, or having side conversations versus how much more room can we make. And it's a great problem to have, for management, but it's unfortunate for the people who can't get in. But it's just we're trying to accommodate everybody as much as we can through whatever ways that we're able to. But that's the unknown factor. If you make room for 50 booths and 300 more people apply, you have another issue. And the show only turns over once a year, so it seems like it's a long waning process. Like we're satisfied with, we're not satisfied, but we're happy that we got 50. We're increasing the amount of booths inside the show, but it may not satisfy all the people that are out there that want to get in, and that's troublesome. But
Yeah, I mean, to add to a little bit there, I love entrepreneurial spirit. I love energy. I love seeing things grow. So to Jimmy's point and Brian's point, we're doing everything we can to satisfy the appetite. And I think the 3 trade nights in-house was a masterful plan by us. I'm going to pat ourselves on the back, making lemonade out of lemons. We had the facility to deal with. We had to figure out how are we going to make this really, really exciting and really, really work. And I think what we pulled off down there was commendable. I really do. If you saw that space, if anyone is in the Cleveland area and can get a tour at the IX Center with the empty basement and remembers the photos and the videos of that trade night, I think it's amazing what was done down there. And again, to see the fact and know the fact that we had thousands and thousands of people there every night, and there were still other people that wanted to partake and buy and sell in different areas and arenas. It's wonderful for our hobby as a whole. It's a really healthy, great thing, and we're going to continue to try to satisfy everyone's appetite as best we can. And the trade night is the Nationals' way of showing support for exactly what you're talking about, right? There was no charge for that at all. All you needed was a badge. It was free to come in. Everything that was down there was supported, paid for, and covered by the National. So I think that those elements speak pretty profoundly to where we're at and how our community is based and what we think of our event. I think that really says a lot.
I thought the trade nights were a great ad this year. I was able to make it one of the nights. We actually did some live broadcasting for Sports Card Investor from one of the trade nights. And not only did you have thousands of people there, but we had thousands of people watching our stream of the trade night live. Thousands of people who were literally sitting at home. Well, really tens of thousands of people, because people were jumping in and jumping out of the stream. But we had tens of thousands of people that were sitting home across the country that were so interested and curious what was taking place at the National Trade Night that they were tuned in on their TV or their devices, just watching Trade Night live. So I think that was a testament to the desire of the collector community to have a really big trade night like that. And I definitely do feel like you guys deserve a pat on the back for that. Is that something you feel, are you bringing that back for Chicago? Can we look forward to another 3 nights of trade nights at Chicago next year?
Yes. I would say we all agree as a team that we're going to have trade nights next year in Chicago.
Yeah, we were actually
That's great.
we were just out there. Our whole team was just out there last week, mapping out space, putting things down and ideas, based on, the event's been there so many times in the last 10 years. We all kind of know the space pretty well, but when you reimagine it and rethink it into, trying to understand what happened at Cleveland and, how.
So I know it's early in your planning process, and I know you don't have all the answers for next year yet, but as you look forward to the Chicago, National next year, are there certain things that you might be able to share with us that people could expect now that might be a little different than past Chicago's? Maybe anything you took away from the Cleveland experience that you're going to try to tweak or change a little bit that might make Chicago feel a little different than previous ones?
I don't know. I guess the first thing that came to mind that we added a shipping service in this year, which was a company called PostNet. We have to work with Chicago to see if that's applicable, but we did put a third-party shipping service on the floor to help people get their valuables, home from the show. That was a pretty nice asset, and I think it would be expandable. I kind of know what you're looking for, maybe a juicy, something juicy, but I don't have anything juicy to tell you at this time. So
It sounds like, no big announcements yet. I understand you guys wanting to be a lot deeper in your planning process and make the announcements on your own, but it sounds like what we do know is that you are going to make some process optimizations to make, the 2025 Chicago National run more smoothly with things like line management than 2024 Cleveland or 2023 Chicago did. In addition to doing things like continue the trade nights and maybe announcing some more special things that might be happening as we get a little bit closer to the show next year.
Yes, and some of the things we did this year, like the Dealer Welcome Party, we're going to have that again next year in Chicago. The Dealer Welcome Party on Tuesday night, that was a pretty big hit this year too.
Awesome. And we'll wrap up in a minute, but I wanted to ask before we did, one thing that I observed, and we mentioned it a little bit earlier in this interview, was the number of kids and families at the 2024 Cleveland National. I feel like if you were to have a measure of like the number of kids that actually came to the National, my guess is, based on what I've seen, having gone to the last 5 Nationals, is there has been a pretty dramatic year-over-year increase in the number of kids at the show, and I really felt it this year in Cleveland. So many kids all over the show floor, so many families that came into the show together. As Joe was saying earlier in the conversation, it's kind of the ultimate, family event given the affordability and kind of the entertainment factor. As you think about that, is there more that can be done for the kids? The trade nights are obviously a big step forward. How much do you think about, kind of the kids and the families aspect as you're planning out next year's National?
Well, we did one little thing this year in Cleveland. We gave out packs of cards to the kids, and they were basically repacked packages that we had professionally repackaged, and inside there were autograph tickets, winning autograph tickets for the kids. And every X amount of packs had a chance to get a free autograph ticket. We worked hand in hand with TriStar. They went up to TriStar Pavilion, and they got a free autograph. So it's kind of cool. It gets the kids introduced a little more into the show, a little more into the autograph pavilion maybe, and they get something for free for coming in. Those packs were free to all kids 12 and under. There was also some higher winner, I'm going to call them chase autographs. For example, let's say like a Mike Tyson or a Hulk Hogan autograph or somebody like that could have been in there. Somebody big like that at the National could have been in there. So that was one thing we did for the kids this year. It was pretty well received. We've done it at our local shows. It's worked out there, and it worked out pretty good at the National. Right.
That's cool to hear. I look forward to seeing that and how you guys build upon that in the future. So we've obviously talked a lot about next year, and Joe mentioned earlier that hotels in some cases are already starting to get booked up. For anyone listening who wants to get a jump on planning to attend the 2025 National, what should they be doing today, and what should they keep an eye out for in the months ahead?
So as far as hotels go, they should go to our website, go to the National website, and contact Greg from Housing and start booking your hotels as soon as possible, because they are going to fill up. And Greg is the official housing housing company for the National. So go and book through him.
Great. And then when are tickets available? If someone wants to get, VIP tickets when they come out and everything like that, when do people look forward to that?
The day after the Monday after Thanksgiving weekend, we do it.
Okay. So there you go.
Well, general admission tickets and VIP tickets both go on sale that day.
The Monday after Thanksgiving. So there you go. So anyone
Yeah.
who wants to get the early jump, do it then.
Exactly.
Well, good guys. Listen, I appreciate all three of you joining the show today. I know all of you are extremely busy in your planning for next year's National already, and I really appreciate you guys wanting to share some of the insights from the 2024 experience and also some of the details from 2025 upcoming with the audience today. So Thank you all for joining, Joe, Jim, and Brian. I really appreciate it, and look forward to having you back on the show as we get closer to the 2025 National.
Thanks for having us.
That was good, Geoff. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
All righty.
All right. That was a very insightful interview. I appreciate you listening, and I want to remind you that the full-length episodes of The Geoff Wilson Show are available on YouTube, on the Geoff Wilson Show channel on YouTube, and also on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. So make sure you are subscribed everywhere so you can listen to these full shows. We appreciate you watching, and we'll see you soon with the next one. Take care.